Feeling the often unbearable weight of the cost of living on their shoulders, some people have turned to living in RVs as a way to get by. The problem is finding a place to park long term.
America is hitting a breaking point, and almost nobody is talking about it. Tens of thousands of families are being laid off, priced out of housing, and pushed into RVs, vans, and cars just to survive. But right when people need mercy and space, cities are doing the opposite, banning overnight parking, towing RVs, and forcing families into industrial zones and highway shoulders. This isn't a lifestyle trend anymore. It's desperation. For millions of Americans, the financial equation stopped working in 2025 to 2026. Massive layoffs swept through tech, finance, retail, trucking, transportation, and manufacturing industries simultaneously, devastating middle-class families. Industry experts estimate hundreds of thousands to over 1 million workers lost jobs in a short period, leaving paycheck-to-paycheck households with no safety net. The speed from job loss to homelessness shocks most people. Federal Reserve surveys show over 40% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency, much less a month's rent. Median rent in many metro areas now reaches $1,800 to $2,500 monthly. Combined with rising car payments, food inflation, and soaring utility bills, losing even one paycheck becomes catastrophic. Facing eviction, families increasingly choose the only affordable option remaining, moving into cars, vans, or RVs. What was once a lifestyle choice or retirement dream has transformed into a survival strategy. Tens of thousands of families across America, from California to Florida, are abandoning houses and apartments, parking near big box stores, gas stations, and highway rest areas just to stay safe. The result is a wave of mobile homelessness colliding directly with aggressive city crackdowns and enforcement laws never designed for this scale of need. American streets are witnessing an unprecedented crisis where traditional housing failure meets punitive policies, leaving vulnerable families caught in an impossible situation with nowhere legal to exist. Across America, city governments are quietly rewriting local parking laws faster than most people realize. Previously, someone living in a car or RVs might stay in a neighborhood for weeks before authorities intervened. Now, many cities have implemented citywide no overnight parking rules, leaving virtually no legal place to stop. Los Angeles, Portland, San Diego, Sacramento, Austin, Denver, and Seattle are aggressively expanding towaway zones, banning RVs from residential streets, school zones, parks, beaches, and business districts. Instead of case-by-case enforcement, cities paint curbs red, post no parking signs, or declare entire zip codes completely off-limits. Consequences arrive immediately and brutally. RVs parked overnight are ticketed, tagged, and often towed and impounded, with fees ranging from $300 to $800, more than many families can afford. Once impounded, cities require proof of registration, license, and insurance to release vehicles, which many low-income residents no longer possess. This creates a tragic chain reaction. Families lose not only their shelter, but also belongings, medication, clothing, birth certificates, and legal documents stored inside the RVs. Essentially, towing in RVs becomes equivalent to seizing someone's home, and most never recover it. What used to be a parking issue has transformed into a humanitarian crisis. Cities now face far more people living in vehicles than available shelter beds, yet enforcement continues escalating. The punishment for poverty has become losing everything, including any realistic pathway back to stability and housing security. Campgrounds were once safe refuges for budget travelers, seasonal workers, and retirees. Today, they've become the last housing option for people who cannot afford traditional rent. And even those doors are closing. As RVs homelessness explodes, private and public campgrounds are tightening rules, enforcing stay limits, and evicting long-term guests. Many RVs parks traditionally allowed month-to-month or year-long stays, but rising demand has shifted focus away from long-term residents toward nightly tourists who pay more. Some campgrounds now enforce strict 14-day or 28-day limits, forcing families to pack up and move constantly, even when they have nowhere realistic to go. Prices are also rising sharply. Average monthly rates at many RVs parks now run between $700 and $1,200, not including electricity surcharges. For someone on unemployment or working low-wage jobs, sustainability becomes nearly impossible. Public lands and state parks once absorbed overflow, but those areas have also shut down long stays, issued fines, or installed gate systems blocking overnight access. The result is a revolving eviction cycle. Families move into campgrounds when they still have money, run out of cash, get forced out, and join roadside encampments or city streets. Campgrounds were never designed as affordable long-term housing solutions, and now they're overwhelmed, tightening rules precisely when desperate families need them most. The traditional safety net for mobile living has completely collapsed under unprecedented demand. In many West Coast and Mountain West cities, policy responses have escalated rapidly from warnings to full-scale removal operations. Municipal towing programs, once reactive and case-driven, have become systematic, budgeted, and sometimes daily enforcement actions. Cities including Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, Denver, Oakland, Phoenix, Sacramento, Salt Lake City, and San Francisco have created designated teams whose job is patrolling streets, tagging vehicles, and clearing encampments as quickly as they form. Reports indicate hundreds of RVs monthly are being towed in some regions. The justification centers on neighborhood complaints, sanitation, concerns, and public safety. However, for people living in these rigs, a tow often represents a point of no return. Most cannot afford accumulated registration fees, unpaid tickets, towing charges, storage fees, and insurance requirements stacked against them. RVs' impound fees can reach $1,000 to $3,000, and vehicles are often destroyed or auctioned if not claimed. Because the RVs serves as both transportation and shelter, losing it eliminates any chance of job interviews, keeping appointments, or reaching social services. Families then fall into even more precarious homelessness: tents, shelters, or the street. Critics argue this system punishes poverty rather than solving it. Cities removing RVs without providing alternative housing essentially sweep the crisis out of sight, block by block, rather than addressing why so many people are turning to vehicles initially. The enforcement-first approach creates more instability while offering zero pathways to actual housing solutions. The fastest-growing population in the RV's homeless crisis isn't retirees or single men, it's families with children. Rising rent, layoffs, and unstable incomes mean more parents are turning to cars, campers, minivans, and hand-me-down RVs to keep their kids off the street. Nationally, advocacy groups estimate over 2 million school-aged children now live in unstable housing: cars, motels, relatives' driveways, or RVs, but experts warn the number is much higher because many families avoid reporting their living situation to schools out of fear. Inside these RVs, life is brutally difficult. Kids do homework on dashboards, dining tables that double as beds, or free Wi-Fi parking lots outside libraries and fast food restaurants. Families cook outside on camp stoves or eat cold food when propane runs out. Finding a safe place to sleep every night becomes a full-time job for parents, leaving little time to look for work, file job applications, or attend interviews. Kids lose access to steady routines, reliable internet, and basic hygiene, making school performance and social life nearly impossible. Beyond the daily grind, there is emotional trauma. Children internalize instability, isolation, and fear of police knocks or tow trucks arriving in the morning. This crisis is producing a mobile generation of students whose childhoods are shaped by housing insecurity, something the education system and the public are completely unprepared to address. These children represent America's most vulnerable population, silently suffering the consequences of adult economic failures. The economics of RV's life have flipped in the worst possible way for struggling families. Just a few years ago, RVs were selling at record highs. But by 2025 to 2026, the market reversed sharply. Used RVs prices have fallen 20 to 40% from peak pandemic highs, depending on condition and type. What sounds like good news initially becomes a trap for those already living in them. Many low-income RVs owners are upside down financially, meaning they owe more on their RVs than it's worth. Others bought older motorhomes cheaply, only to discover repair costs are devastating. Mechanical failures are no longer minor inconveniences, they're catastrophes. A replacement transmission can run $3,000 to $6,000, a blown engine $7,000 to $15,000, and even small fixes like roof leaks or brake systems cost hundreds. Fuel prices punish mobility too. Gas and diesel have spiked back into the $3.50 to $6 per gallon range in many states, making it unaffordable to drive from one legal parking area to another. Families now find themselves stuck in broken or barely functioning RVs they cannot afford to fix, but also cannot sell. Even scrapyards offer pennies on the dollar. Essentially, the falling resale market means that once someone enters RV's homelessness, exiting becomes nearly impossible. The very shelter keeping them off the street transforms into a financial anchor, dragging them deeper into crisis with no escape route available. Across the country, cities are reframing homelessness through criminal law. Dozens of municipalities have introduced or expanded vehicle residency bans, which prohibit sleeping, cooking, or even remaining inside a vehicle parked on public property. These laws don't explicitly state homelessness is illegal, but they achieve the same result. In many areas, police now have authority to ticket anyone suspected of living in their vehicle, even with valid registration. Fines typically range from $50 to $300, and unpaid citations escalate into warrants, towing, and license suspensions. For someone already struggling to survive, one ticket can spiral into total vehicle loss. Some cities are adding restrictions forcing RVs to move every 24 or 72 hours under threat of arrest or impoundment. A family may spend every disposable dollar on gas just to legally exist, money that could have paid for food or medicine. Civil rights advocates argue that these ordinances turn survival into a crime, punishing people for not having money to afford rent. Worse, the laws offer few alternatives. Shelters are full, wait lists for housing assistance stretch months or years, and safe parking programs can only serve a fraction of those in need. For cities, crackdowns reduce complaints and visibility. But for families living in RVs, cars, and vans, every day becomes a legal minefield, not a housing solution. The criminalization of poverty has reached unprecedented levels, transforming basic survival into a punishable offense across America. One of the most politically explosive aspects of the RV's homelessness crisis is sanitation. When families live in vehicles long-term without access to sewage hookups, problems start multiplying fast, and neighborhoods react strongly. Cities across the West. Coast reports spikes in illegal dumping of gray and black water, trash overflow, and abandoned RVs. It's not because people don't care. It's because they have almost no infrastructure to safely manage waste. RV's dump stations cost $10 to $25 per use. Many require payment by credit card, and some pumps are miles outside city limits. Most RV's parks that used to provide dump access are now refusing anyone without a site reservation. That cuts off the only realistic legal option, leaving families to improvise. Residents in nearby homes see the consequences: overflowing garbage, waste runoff after rain, smells in summer, and demand action. City councils respond with bans, towing sweeps, and enforcement campaigns. But the underlying problem is bigger. In some cities, sanitation departments say RV's waste complaints have risen 300% or more in just a few years. Instead of building safe waste systems, cities punish the people caught in them. Until municipalities provide legal dump stations and trash services, crackdowns will continue, and public frustration will fuel even harsher policies against vulnerable populations. For thousands of RV's dwellers, police enforcement has become a constant part of life. Many cities have adopted policies requiring RVs, vans, and cars used as housing to move every 24, 48, or 72 hours. The idea, officials claim, is preventing long-term encampments. In practice, it turns daily survival into a full-time job. Police mark tires, tag vehicles, issue warnings, and then return with tow trucks if a rig hasn't moved far enough or fast enough. Families who don't have working engines, fuel money, insurance, or a legal spot are effectively given no lawful choice except to break the law. Each enforced move pushes RV's clusters farther away from schools, stores, transit lines, and job centers, into industrial yards, rail corridors, or remote frontage roads. Over time, many cities unknowingly create mobile migration patterns, where entire groups shift block by block, week after week. Every interaction with police increases stress and trauma. Parents explain to children why they have to move again, sometimes at midnight. People work odd hours, afraid their home will be tagged while they're at their job. Police say they are enforcing laws, restoring streets, and addressing safety issues. But RV's dwellers describe it as psychological warfare, where stability cannot exist for longer than a weekend. The end result is a population constantly uprooted, exhausted, and pushed further to society's margins, without ever receiving real help or pathways to permanent housing solutions. As cities fence off parks, close beaches to overnight parking, and ban RVs from residential neighborhoods, families living in vehicles are getting pushed into the last spaces nobody wants. These nowhere zones include industrial strips, airport frontage roads, abandoned lots, gravel shoulders near warehouses, and stretches alongside freeways. Living conditions in these areas are dangerous. Industrial zones lack lighting, sidewalks, clean water, stores, and public transit. Parents walk long distances for groceries, while kids stay inside to avoid traffic, stray dogs, and heavy machinery. Highway shoulders are even worse. Cars speed by just feet away, and dust, exhaust, and road noise never stop. Winters are freezing, summers blisteringly hot, and police patrols are constant. Because these zones are out of sight, city services rarely reach them. Outreach teams might visit downtown but rarely venture into fenced industrial areas. Medical emergencies take longer to respond to because streets are unmarked or hidden. Data from West Coast cities show a pattern. As bans multiply, RVs dwellers migrate outward in rings, eventually gathering on the edges of metro areas. In some places, families are 10 to 20 miles from the nearest grocery store or school. The irony is devastating. The same cities banning RVs dwellers from neighborhoods are unintentionally creating isolated, unregulated encampments in unsafe places where vulnerable families become easier prey for crime, illness, and predatory towing operations without any protection. Housing costs have soared so far beyond wages that millions of Americans are being priced out with nowhere to land. Across the United States, rent has risen 30 to 50% in many cities since 2020, while typical wages have increased only 5 to 12%. In metros like Phoenix, Las Vegas, Miami, San Diego, and Denver, two-bedroom apartments frequently list for $2,000 to $3,000 monthly, even in working-class neighborhoods. Home ownership is now fully out of reach for most renters. According to national trackers, the average home price sits above $425,000, and mortgage rates hovering around 6 to 7% mean monthly payments exceed $3,000 plus taxes and insurance. Owning a house no longer requires just good credit. It requires high-level income, wealth, and savings most families simply don't have. Meanwhile, cities are not building enough entry-level housing. Affordable units have been demolished faster than they are replaced. For every new affordable home built, 2 to 3 older units disappear due to renovation, demolition, or rent hikes. Waiting lists for subsidized housing run months to multiple years, and Section 8 voucher holders regularly report that only 1 in 10 landlords will accept them, even when they qualify. Faced with skyrocketing housing costs, families do the last affordable thing: move into RVs, vans, or cars. For many, it's a transition they never imagined, from 2 incomes and a rental apartment to parking lots, industrial blocks, or roadside shoulders. RVs homelessness represents the direct outcome of a housing system buckling completely. One of the most heartbreaking consequences of the RVs homelessness surge is the impact on children's education. Public schools classify housing insecure students through the McKinney-Vento Act, which includes kids living in motels, cars, RVs, or doubling up with relatives. Official numbers show more than 1.2 million students in this category, but educators warn the true number is far higher, as many families are afraid to disclose their living situation. Constant movement breaks the foundation children need. With cities forcing RVs to relocate every few days and campgrounds evicting long-term residents, families may cross multiple school districts within a single month. Kids lose teachers, counselors, friends, and routines, creating emotional distress and academic delay. Access to homework is also a major issue. Stable Wi-Fi is rare, and many RVs families rely on fast food parking lots, libraries, or hotspots when they can afford them. Simple assignments become battles: dead laptops, no lighting, no table space, or siblings sharing a device. School attendance drops sharply because families lack transportation when their RVs breaks down or moves miles from campus. Children sleep poorly in noisy industrial zones, so classroom performance suffers. Teachers report spikes in anxiety, fatigue, and behavioral problems among unstably housed students. The long-term consequences are frightening. Children who move frequently are 70% more likely to fall behind academically, and many never catch up. This generation of RVs living students is growing fast, and they are silently paying the highest price of America's housing collapse. RVs may look like homes on wheels, but without hookups, safety becomes a daily gamble. Families improvising heat, cooking, and power are exposed to hazards rarely seen in stabilized neighborhoods. Winter cold drives desperate measures. Propane heaters, open-flame stoves, and modified electrical systems are now common inside parked RVs. Fire departments across the West report growing numbers of RVs fires, often sparked by malfunctioning heaters, overloaded extension cords, or makeshift wiring. A single spark can destroy not just an RV's but someone's entire life. Belongings, medication, documents, clothing, everything. Carbon monoxide is another invisible killer. Without proper ventilation, propane heaters can poison families while they sleep. Police and firefighters confirm that multiple deaths each winter involve people trying to stay warm in vehicles. Crime increases as RVs clusters move deeper into unsafe industrial areas. With no lighting or foot traffic, these zones attract thieves, drug activity, and predatory behavior. Families report stolen generators, slashed tires, and catalytic converter theft, losses that can completely immobilize them. Sanitation and illness risks spread quickly. Lack of clean water, trash removal, and safe sewer access increases the chance of infections, rodent infestations, and foodborne illness. Even routine emergencies are life-threatening when ambulances struggle to locate campers hidden behind warehouses or down fenced roads. These are not simply people choosing RV's life. They are families forced into dangerous environments with zero protection and no official support. The longer the crisis grows, the more preventable tragedies will occur across America. Living in an RV is inherently risky because the vehicle is both your home and your only form of transportation. When anything breaks, engine, transmission, generator, plumbing, brakes, or roof, the consequences ripple immediately. A motorhome with a bad engine turns into immovable shelter, meaning it cannot legally relocate when cities enforce 72-hour parking limits. Once tagged, it becomes vulnerable to towing, and when an RV is impounded, the odds of recovery are slim. Repair costs are staggering. Diesel engines common in Class A motorhomes can cost $10,000 to $20,000 to replace. Even smaller Class C gas engines often run $6,000 to $10,000. A transmission failure is $3,000 to $6,000, and suspension work can easily exceed $2,000. Families who bought older rigs, believing they were practical solutions, now face financial traps. Parts shortages and inflation make matters worse. RV shops report wait times of weeks or months for critical repairs. Families often must live in the disabled RVs while waiting, terrified that a tow truck may arrive first. Even small systems are costly. Generators, essential for heat, cooling, and cooking, often cost $800 to $4,000 to replace or overhaul. Once the RV becomes non-mobile, it loses remaining value. Families are stuck with metal boxes they cannot sell, cannot drive, and can barely maintain, with absolutely no pathway back to stable housing or financial recovery. Government systems that were designed for temporary homelessness are collapsing under the pressure of long-term vehicle residency. Traditional shelters were built for foot traffic, people who could walk in, sleep overnight, and return to a permanent address. They were not built to serve thousands living in RVs and cars. Cities report shelters operating at 90 to 100% capacity, with waitlists stretching days or weeks. Families with vehicles often do not qualify for beds because many programs prioritize pedestrians, women fleeing abuse, or individuals with severe health conditions. Public aid programs are also buckling. Social workers carry caseloads that surpass recommended limits by 200 to 300%, slowing benefits processing. SNAP. Applications, disability claims, and housing assistance requests take months to approve. Meanwhile, subsidized housing pipelines move at a crawl. Section 8 voucher lotteries regularly receive tens of thousands of entries for a few hundred openings, and it is common to wait 5 years or more for a placement. Nonprofits, once the backbone of homeless support, are running out of funding. Donations dipped during inflation, and organizations report serving twice as many people with the same or smaller budgets. Cities keep asking state and federal agencies to intervene, but no large-scale national plan exists. There is no FEMA response, no housing emergency declaration, and no surge funding. The result? Families fall into RVs homelessness faster than government systems can catch them, and most never receive meaningful help before the crisis spirals completely out of control. Perhaps the most hidden part of the crisis is that millions living in RVs, vans, and cars are not counted as homeless at all. Official federal definitions exclude most vehicle-based living unless the family is parked in a shelter lot or a government-recognized program. This means the people society sees every day: RVs lining city streets, campers tucked into industrial zones, families in Walmart parking lots, do not exist in federal statistics. As a result, the true scale of instability is dramatically underestimated. Advocacy groups estimate that between 3 and 5 million Americans now live in vehicles, RVs, converted buses, vans, or makeshift campers, but only a fraction are recorded in government reports. This invisibility has massive consequences. Cities receive funding based on counted homeless populations. If RVs dwellers aren't counted, aid doesn't grow with need. Shelters, housing authorities, schools, and health systems then fail to plan for the real demand. Families living in vehicles avoid official systems out of fear. They worry that reporting their situation may trigger child welfare investigations or police harassment. Many do everything possible to stay unnoticed, sleeping in industrial zones, rotating parking spots, and keeping children indoors during the day. As long as vehicle dwellers remain statistically invisible, cities can claim progress while the crisis worsens. America is in the middle of what may be the largest unrecognized homeless population in modern history, hidden behind tinted windows and parked RVs. The invisibility perpetuates the crisis by preventing appropriate resource allocation and policy responses. Families aren't numbers. They're us, our neighbors, our co-workers, and sometimes our own relatives. Should cities crack down harder or start helping people living in RVs and cars? Your voice matters, and this channel is here to bring these stories into the light. And stick around. Our next video digs deeper into how layoffs and rent spikes are rewriting the American dream in real time.